The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to the program. This is King of Podcasts here with you once again on another wonderful edition of the Broadcasters Podcast. KingofPodcasts.com is where you find it. And, I know that the last few months, haven't really talked about anything spectacular or very entertaining or overly wild and fun, any movie stuff or TV stuff or anything like that, because the summertime has just been slow on that. And the things of entertainment that are out there, we got the Olympics coming up this weekend and politics. And I already said this last week that I don't want to go into politics, but I can talk about certain subjects that will relate to it. Okay. Because I'll tell you like this. If I'm going to talk about anything political at all, it's the way that the news media is right now today. If you've heard me for any particular length of time, you know that I don't like the way that the establishment media, run by corporations, is operating. Personally, if you watch any of the channels that are very simple to remember, right? I don't want to even say their names, but the mainstream media, right? And I don't care about the political slant on any of them, but I'll list them. Okay, so CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. Then we go down the line to what? Newsmax, News Nation. We can go to BBC. We can go to Al Jazeera, I-24, all these others. And we go even to the farther, into the more the supposedly news, but more opinionated with, and NBC that also have their own channels on the internet. What's most important for everybody out there is that the media out there that's corporate, they are trying to put themselves, just like streaming for TV and movies, they're trying to get themselves multi-platformed. So they've embedded themselves on social media. They've embedded themselves on various fast channel platforms like Pluto or Samsung TV Plus or Roku. Because if they're not going to watch your channel, maybe they'll catch the clips. Maybe they'll catch their alternate services, whatever there is. But no matter what you consider about this right now, AI is constantly changing. At the moment, as I speak, this week, my Android phone now just got an update so that I can actually download the Google Gemini app, which I already pay for. ChatGPT, already got that too. And now my Google Gemini now operates as my Google Assistant. And what does it do? It does much better than Google Assistant, way better. And I must admit, AI has been helping quite a bit in some of the things that I do. I still need human input. I still need to go and do my research and go out there and write. But I've been thumping my fist on my chair, and I tell you, it's like banging my fist on the desk, telling you people, the media out there, any of you minions that decide to listen to this program, this sole little Broadcasters Podcast, I'm telling you that AI right now is continuing to go ahead and crawl its way and seep into everything like a virus when it comes to what your news media is going to be. Because people are not willing to go ahead and just be force-fed what one particular network is going to say. Remember, what you see right now that's flashy on television, I consider it all entertainment value. Unless they're actually showing me something live or breaking news and I can see the footage. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Because they don't remember how many people in those buildings do they employ that are investigative journalists, that are reporters that are actually finding things out, that are not just some simple things that come from a news source. They actually do some digging. They actually get on the phones. They actually go out, take their microphones, take their recorders, and they go out and go find news. Give me that. I don't wait for sources to come along. I want people to go and get on the beat and go find things out. Shake the ground. Find out what's going on out there. But I go back and I remember when I was talking to Nicole Jordan, the PR specialist that I had on, I want to say about 5 years ago. And we were going into this conversation about journalism back then. And it's like it's so changed since then. Because now, as long as you give the input into AI, OpenAI, ChatGPT, which now has SearchGPT, now to compete up against Gemini. We're going to talk about that on the program tonight. And then the things that are going on right now in terms of AI that's being, the companies that are buying and paying for the chance to get into the archives of these news organizations to eventually take over the intellectual property. And once they do, they basically suck the lifeblood out of that publication in terms of their staffing, in terms of their infrastructure, in terms of their management, and they just take it over. And it's gone. I mean, until recently, we had companies that would just go ahead and take the intellectual property and just hold on to it. I mean, we look at the companies right now that hold on to so many different, of all the Hollywood rags, right? Billboard, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, and Deadline, they're all owned by the same company, right? Gizmodo owns like a whole bunch of different things. And that's how they all go. They're all, it's deregulation all over again. So all these companies now, they're poorly operating all these individual brands. But then what happens? Well, they're holding on for the likes of AI because you know what? They are, at essence, private equity. They're vultures. They're just going to pick apart and hold on to this intellectual property because it's going to be worth something to somebody. And then when these tech AI companies have now come into play, because now the tech AI platforms are now at the point of so much research and development that they can now actually operate, stand alone. All you need to do is drop the input in, and you're getting it to work. And there are other platforms out there that are trying to do their own AI projects. So, but again, we're talking about the ones that we already know of tech AI, which we can say is the leaders right now in the pack are ChatGPT or OpenAI, with now SearchGPT in that fold. And then Google, which now has Gemini. ChatGPT most likely will be the default for Apple search coming up. And also Microsoft doing their own, because also is OpenAI, and they have, they're trying to also insert it into Bing. So everybody's got to think where you have your set-alone AI service, and now you have the assistants on these various platforms, whether it's Android or iPhone or iOS. Now they're setting up with their own assistants. Microsoft, Cortana is going to get operated by ChatGPT at some point. They're going to embed themselves. It's going to integrate. That's already coming up right now. It's already happening. Machine learning. From what I work on right now, one of the networks I am a program director for, I was, hearing about this since 2005. Machine learning. Going back to that point at webmasterradio.fm, now WMR.fm. The search engine optimization folks, SEOs, affiliate marketers, social media experts, everybody in digital marketing and business-to-business marketing, they were all paying attention to this. Machine learning was going to move forward. We always kept talking about it, and eventually, here it is, AI. It is very good right now. I know we're only starting to hear about it in the mainstream ether in the last 2 years, but let me tell you, it has grown by storm. It is just moving along, and the storm front's coming, and all these media establishments are not ready for it. So the visual news is going to affect this pretty soon, but the print is coming immediately. Print and digital. It's going to be affected very quickly. Get ready for it. We're already seeing that right now. I mean, how many times do you read a story right now if it's not behind a paywall? How often do you see a story that is done with AI generation? You can even tell the way it's written. You can read it was AI written at first. And then you get the fluff that you get in the first couple of paragraphs. And then you have to scroll down, hit a couple of pop-up ads, or a sign-up, or a subscription paywall, or some other nonsense going on until you finally get to what you want to see. You hit a read more, blink, button, whatever there is. And you have to keep scrolling down until you actually get to what you want to go and see. And sometimes the stories that you see, it's only worth reading 1 or 2 sentences out of the entire story because they allowed AI to create it. Not by human hands, but you can do it with human hands and you can create something that's really good. Because let me tell you, if I put enough information together, when I write something or I prepare questions or I do talking points now, if I put enough notes together and insert it into one of these AI platforms, it comes back with good. See, the more work I put into an AI platform of the good grit, work, research, getting my hands pseudo dirty, not really, but you know what I'm saying, doing my homework, getting everything I got put into place, and then generating something, that is the benefit of AI. But you actually have to put the work in. Meanwhile, these news corporations, they're going to allow the archives of people that actually still did journalism, that knew how to write, that knew how to go ahead and formulate stories and write what could have been Pulitzer Prize winning. Stories that we will still go back and read and we will be in awe because they're written like books. But now, these AI companies are going to go ahead and start taking how these writers wrote before. Now, that might be nice because maybe some of the writing that will be done generated by AI will actually be done better now. But what's going to happen is there will be no more human hands actually working on those stories. Only the people that are going to generate the information that goes into the computer, into the AI. That's it. It's like something out of the 60s, 70s that you watch, you know, like you're watching Batman in the Batcave in the 60s series, right? And Batman goes to the supercomputer and he adds information into the supercomputer and it generates this. That's AI. Same kind of concept in a very early archaic sense. But now, we've talked about it for the last couple of months that the tech AI companies, what they've been doing now is they are starting to pay in advance for the archive access. And eventually when they learn how to go and take care of this, and eventually when they learn how to go and be able to gather the information that these companies would have, and they take the intellectual property, the brands of these companies, they say like a billboard someday, you lose all those writers. But the information that comes in can be fed into AI, and AI acts as a reporter. It will generate the story. That's what you're going to get someday. And that's going to be at the sacrifice of the journalists that created all this great information to create a publication of a billboard or Rolling Stone or whatever, and change. And then it'll take over. And then those AI companies will find a way to go ahead and charge you on subscription so you can get that information. Maybe you still go to a website to go look for it to get the more exclusive access, or you just pay for a service and you're just going to get whatever you want when you need it. But imagine that. Because it will not be actual writers that are having the autonomy to write this. No, it'll be data entry. It'll be feeding data information into the systems. It's like Johnny 5, okay, in Short Circuit. More input. That's the same idea. More input. Can I make it even easier for you? Like, that's a pretty good summary right now of what tech AI is doing at this moment in our lives. That's what we're getting right now. Los Angeles Times puts out a very interesting story this week in the entertainment section. Get paid or sue, how the news business is combating the threat of AI. Now, remember, before I even get into this story, I'm not going to talk about what everybody can say that, that attempt of trying to get tech AI companies or the search engines that own these said tech AI companies to pay for some kind of, publisher's code, like an advertising revenue stream that was going to be regulated. And that the federal governments, like you'll see in Australia and Canada that try to do this, the bargaining codes, right? They wanted to go ahead and set those up to make the publications pay for information where, the gateway to get people to look at your content, it's not by what you're doing yourselves. It's not your social media. It's by Google results or Bing results or Yahoo results. and because of the fact that they help you find a way to get to your publication, but you're losing advertising revenue in the process. You want to penalize the search engines for your lack of inability to do what Google and Meta and Microsoft have done much better than you, right? Or X. See, the thing is that because of the mistakes of losing out on physical units, which was the way that, newspapers, magazines knew how to go ahead and get information, or cable, right? Physical units. So your network TV news, cable news, you had to go ahead and buy cable to listen to go to find a newspaper or publication. You had to go to a newsstand or however you go and buy, bookstore, whatever it is. And you had to go and buy a physical magazine or publication. So you actually would get money on circulation. But those days are gone. Nobody's buying magazines. Nobody's buying newspapers. Especially when the prices have gone up so high. I look at what Sunset on Palm Beach Post here, $5 or $3 for like a weekday and $5 for the Sunday coupons. No way is that worth the time or money. No. 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. Yeah. But and not that much either. It wasn't even that much, not even close. And all those companies that want to give out physical units, then they try to go ahead and then first of all, they were trying to go ahead and separate the revenue between physical units and digital. Now they can't do that anymore. Now they just have to they want you to go and buy the digital subscription and hope that you'll take up on that. Maybe. But there are so many other outlets that also report on the same information. Or you could find that information because somebody will repost it and find it somewhere or scrape it or whatever it is. But then also these tech AI companies are also able to do the same thing. So back to this Los Angeles Times article. So they first talked to a journalist, Javier Cabral. He wanted to test Google's artificial intelligence, AI-powered search results. Asked a question about a topic he knew intimately, Gusto Bread's Coffee, which is a Long Beach, California bakery. Google's AI summarized information about the bakery in a few sentences of bullet points. According to Cabral, the summary wasn't original, but it was listed from an article he wrote last year for the local food and community and culture publication LA Taco, where he's editor-in-chief. And he spent 5 days working on a feature about the bakery, arriving at 4 a.m. to report on the bread-making process. So Cabral says the search giant's AI was ripping him off. Well, LA Taco, it's not behind a paywall. If it's a free publication, what are you going to do? Sounds like it's an alternative mag, like a New Times. Well, that sucks for him, but yeah, that's what's going to go on. Cabral then says in an interview that, quote, the average consumer that just wants to go check it out, they're probably not going to read the article anymore. When you break it down like that, it's a little enraging for sure. So AI is the latest existential threat to news organizations such as Cabral's, fighting to survive amid a rapidly changing media and information environment. Yeah, so they're trying to go and say, the small journalists, poor small journalists. Yeah, the corporations don't give a shit, but they're getting their asses handed to them. Now we're going to go and use the little man to go ahead and help the big corporations to go and get their money back. Do you see how they're doing that? Okay, it's manipulation on a story from Los Angeles Times. Yeah, okay. But I had to wait for the actual context. Wendy Lee here, the staff writer with the LA Times. I had to wait, 4 paragraphs? About 150 words in to finally get to the point. The rise of AI is just the latest existential threat to news organizations such as Cabral's, fighting to survive amid a rapidly changing media and information environment. Okay. And by the way, that story has been going on for months. So you shouldn't be surprised that happens. News outlets have struggled to attract subscribers and advertising dollars in the internet age. Whose fault is that? Because what happened was when these big corporations in their corporate playbooks, they decide to go and start doing what they do in corporate playbooks. They start micromanaging and downsizing. Very popular, because the bottom line is what matters. The shareholders and how much they're making must matter. And since these companies do not keep the creative talent that is able to go ahead and keep generating said dollars with the amount of staff and the amount of management available and resources available and infrastructure, since they don't do that and they start cutting people out, then they cut away the opportunities to make more money. So all they're going to do is just keep dwindling the amount of staff, management, to nothing in order to keep their bottom line, because that's what they do. Social media platforms like Facebook, which publishers depend on to get their content to a massive audience, have largely pivoted away from news. Now with the growth of AI, thanks to companies like Google, Microsoft, and ChatGPT maker OpenAI, well, I guess Microsoft, I thought they were working together, but I guess not. But I know there's something where they're kind of working together in some way, shape, or form. Publishers fear catastrophic consequences will result from digital programs automatically scraping information from their archives and delivering it to audiences for free. Yeah. But LA Times forgets to make the point of, but companies are actually getting paid for that right now. They're taking payoffs to survive on their last legs before tech AI cuts the legs out from under them, and then they're rendered useless. And all that's left is the intellectual properties, which the tech AI companies can gladly buy up at pennies on the dollar. Yep. Daniel Coffey, president and CEO of the News Media Alliance, says that there's something very fundamentally unfair about this. Now, what will happen is there won't be a business model for us in a scenario where they use our own work to compete with us. And that's something we're very worried about. And by the way, this News Media Alliance, they don't include Washington Post and others that have already taken buyouts, taken payoffs from OpenAI. Let's remember that. I've talked about that here on the program. And Daniel Coffey, she says something. She says the quiet thing out loud. Signal above the noise. What will happen is there won't be a business model for us in a scenario where they will use our own work to compete with us. And that's something we're very worried about. Yeah. Let me just rephrase that for you, Danielle. Okay. There is no business model for you where publications like yours with people like you in charge coexist. Okay. They won't work to compete with you. They will overtake you. Let's just call balls and strikes as they are. They're not going to compete with you. They don't need to compete with you. Once they learn your practice, they will just take over. You will not be needed anymore. They can actually just create their own sites. After they get the intellectual property, they can just buy the websites, buy the URLs, use whatever else they have in their disposal, and AI with input among their masses there at OpenAI or Google or Facebook or Meta, they can just go ahead and input the information and let the AI do the talking. Ron Popeil style. Set it and forget it. Tech companies have the reason why they don't need to be charging the bargaining codes that the federal government is trying to go and put on them. Remember, it's been drafted here in the U.S., but it never got to a vote. In Australia and Canada, they tried to go and pull that off on these companies, and, the tech companies told them where they could take that bargaining code and what they could do with it. So Google said in a statement that it designed its AI overviews, the summaries that appear when people enter search queries, to, quote, provide a snapshot of relevant information from multiple web pages. The companies can also provide links with these summaries so people can learn more. Right. So the AI is being said that the tools are not being engaged in copyright infringement and can drive traffic to publishers, which is why they can do what they can do. AI and machine learning could provide useful tools for publishers when doing research or creating reader recommendations, but for many journalistic outlets, the AI revolution represents yet another consequence of the tech behemoths becoming the middlemen between the content producers and their consumers, then taking the spoils for themselves. But they can do that, Wendy, because of the failure of your betters at News Media Alliance, LA Times, New York Times, all these other major publications, when they mismanaged and they, in some cases, also decided to go and do things where they isolated part of their audience. Oh. This is something interesting. Okay, I'm going to say this. I'm not afraid to say this. But for some publications that decided to go ahead and have opinion editorials that are obviously slanted one way or the other, I'm not saying that you're right or wrong. I'm saying that by you deciding to take a position to the right or to the left, hurt your circulation. You lost circulation. You lost readers. You lost subscribers by letting politics dictate what you're doing with your publications. Now, do you care that you're losing money on this? Maybe not so much right now because you're big. You got a lot of subscribers still, and you can still have a reputation out there. Some of these companies right now, they're still being bought and still being used and still can be held up. But for how long? These companies are not going to go dead. The intellectual property, these brands will continue to thrive forever. But see, this article in the LA Times, they are delusional. They do not understand what's going on here, why this happens. Okay? Let me read this one more time. But for many journalistic outlets, the AI revolution represents another consequence of the tech behemoths. Hey, listen, the tech behemoths, they're just being smarter than you. They are the digital disruptors, and they're going to destroy you because you didn't fight to keep your part of the pie alive. And you didn't play along to integrate so that you could have the best of both worlds. No, you didn't do that. You didn't do that. So they say the tech behemoths are the middlemen. No. They are the arbiters. They are in control. When they're ready to go and take you over, they can buy and sell you. And they will. Becoming the middlemen between the content producers and their consumers, and then taking the spoils for themselves. Not just the spoils. They're just going to take you over. They're going to take you over. They have the ad revenue. They have the readership because they're going to have people that might discover them anytime or anytime they want. Or they can just go to these particular AI platforms, ask for something from a said brand, and they'll find it out. It's just a matter of time. Because the news media, this establishment here, this corporate news establishment was never ready for what's going to come to them. For this right here. Because right now, judgment is coming for them. Winter is coming. Let's go Game of Thrones here. Winter is coming. And these major CEOs and writers that still have their jobs, they're going to be left in the cold someday. And what are they going to be doing? I hope you find some work that is not journalism, that you can find outside of journalism, because if you think journalism right now, for those of you right now, if you think you're going to be doing anything in journalism and you're in school for that right now, let me tell you something. Look, you could do independent journalism. I would say you better learn AI and learn how to put an input that will drive AI services to write good stories. That's the only journalism that's going to be left in about the next 10 years. Maybe less than that. Let's say the next 5. Because we're going to start seeing some more publications rendered obsolete. The operations will be obsolete. The brands will continue in perpetuity as brands. But these companies will not survive. They will be bought when they are rendered down to nothing. When these corporations get nothing for it, because these tech companies will be able to go and pay for it, take it off their hands. But what they won't do is, these publications and all, these corporations that get into debt because of these companies, then they'll unload at some point. Because I'll tell you this, man. So you know how CNN, we always hear about, they have had a major hemorrhaging in viewership. They tried their own subscription service, and it was taken down like in less than a year. And the reputation at CNN has dwindled quite a bit. I mean, if the audience is leaving you, they must be doing something different. And Warner Brothers Discovery, they have been looking at possibly trying to go ahead and unload that channel to somebody else. If somebody else will buy it off of them. A separate transaction. And somebody could, but remember, there is, while this 44-year-old organization, this channel has been around, their branding around the world and their intellectual property is so valuable. So even though it's not performing like it has been, like it might have been in the 80s and 90s, well, now we're at the point where, but it still has a lot of value to it. Same thing like where the New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, those publications still have a lot of value behind them because their archives are very valuable. Their names are very valuable. And that's what's going to hold up with some of these places right now that's going to help out for them. So we move along on the story here from Gabriel Kahn, professor at USC's Annenberg School for Communication Journalism. Quote, for the past 20 years, big tech has dictated the business model for news by essentially mandating how news is distributed, either through search or social. And this has turned out to be pretty disastrous for most news organizations. Yeah, the disruption, you didn't play along with these tech companies. You hoped that you could still coexist and you could still dominate over the tech companies. You were sadly mistaken. So news organizations have taken dramatically different approaches. Some, including the Associated Press, Financial Times, and News Corp, which is the owner of Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones, they've signed licensing deals to allow OpenAI to use their content in exchange for payment. Bingo! Payoffs. Vox Media and The Atlantic struck deals with OpenAI. Payoffs. New York Times goes the other route. They are suing OpenAI and Microsoft. We talked about that. Saying that both companies use articles to train their digital assistants and shared text of paywall stories to its users without compensation. Yeah, the newspaper estimated that those actions resulted in billions of dollars in damages. But, also trying to put everything behind paywalls and trying to be so strict about your paywalls, that doesn't help either. Because with the internet, we want access to information. And, the internet doesn't take too kindly to people that don't want to go ahead and give information, put it behind a paywall. They don't want to do it. And it doesn't need to be OpenAI that's doing it. There's piracy in all different ways and fashions. Let's just say it like that, too. Last month, Forbes threatened legal action against AI startup Perplexity, accusing it of plagiarism. That story's in here. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more. After receiving Forbes' letter, Perplexity said it changed the way it represented sources and adjusted the prompting for its AI models. And that the company is trying to develop a revenue-sharing program with publishers. New York Times said that their lawsuit in its battle against AI is not just about getting paid for content now, but protecting the future of the journalism profession. Yeah, bullshit. If you were protecting the journalism profession, then you would be creating more jobs to keep people retained to do journalism. But you're not. You're cutting jobs. Didn't they also sell their building so they don't even have that anymore? Isn't that another thing that they've done too, right? Now, the Professor Kahn here is mistaken in one thing he says here. Quote, with less revenue, news organizations will have fewer journalists able to dedicate time and resources to important in-depth stories. They don't have anybody that does important in-depth stories. How many investigative journalists do we know right now that do that at all? There's not many anymore. I mean, how many times do I see stories right now that are like 3 or 4 or 5 people that are all part of it in some way, shape, or form contributing? Quote, less journalism will be produced and the cost of society will be enormous. Oh, that's the New York Times lawsuit. That's their argument. OpenAI said the New York Times lawsuit was without merit and it has been unable to reproduce examples the newspaper has cited of ChatGPT regurgitating paywalled articles. And the company said publishers have a way to opt out of their sites being used to train AI tools. Microsoft did not respond to a request for comment. A partner of a law firm that is representing the New York Times, they're saying, quote, Microsoft and OpenAI have the process entirely backwards. Neither the New York Times nor other creators should have to opt out of having their work stolen. And there's other cases of plagiarism or other nefarious actions by AI companies that have been going on. April, 8 publications owned by private equity firm Alden Global Capital. Private equity firm owning media. That's a real novel concept. They accuse OpenAI and Microsoft of using and providing information from its news stories without payment. Of course, they want that bargaining code, but they can't get that. In some cases, OpenAI's chat tool provided incorrect information attributed to the publications. And Frank Pine, executive editor for Media News Group and Tribune Publishing, said, for example, Pine said that, or according to Pine, OpenAI said that the Mercury News recommended injecting disinfectants to treat COVID-19, and the Denver Post published research suggesting that smoking cures asthma. Neither publications made such claims. So they're saying that OpenAI put out some misinformation, disinformation, right? So the argument is said to be that when they're not delivering the actual verbatim reporting of our hardworking journalists, they misattribute bogus information to our publications, damaging our credibility. OpenAI says it was not previously aware of Alden's concerns and it is actively engaged in constructive partnerships and conversations with many of these organizations around the world to explore opportunities, discuss any concerns, and provide solutions. But if you want to curb that, you can't just try to sue and push back on these AI companies. If you want no misinformation or no disinformation, you have to go to bed with these folks. You have to take their payments. That's the only way you're going to get to it. You think you're going to go and get them with a lawsuit? That's not going to work. You're not going to win. You will not win. So OpenAI now has a recent deal with News Corp. So the tech company's tools will display content from news outlets in response to user questions and access content from likes of the Wall Street Journal, New York Post, and publications in the UK and Australia to train its AI models. The deal is valued at more than $250 million over 5 years. And News Corp and OpenAI declined to comment on the financial terms. So yeah, they're going to get the archives, they're going to get the access content, and they're paying. So Alden Media Group, I don't know, the private equity firm, why don't you go and take a payoff from them? I don't know. Although OpenAI has cut deals with some publishers, the tech industry has argued that it should be able to train AI models on content available online and bring up relevant information under the fair use doctrine. Chris McKenzie, spokesman of Chamber of Progress, an industry group that represents Google and Meta, says, as quote, as long as these companies aren't reproducing verbatim what these news sites are putting out, we believe they are well within their legal rights to offer this content to users. Correct. If you're citing these places, that's what we're supposed to do. Listen, these publications are not going after, network or cable news sources that cite them. Oh, but you're using our content. You need to pay us. No, we're citing you. We're claiming copyright. We're going to go ahead and give you the courtesy. So OpenAI and ChatGPT and Gemini, they could all just simply link stories to their articles, link stories to the publications, and cite them. And they shouldn't have to do anything else. They shouldn't have to pay for anything else. But for the deals that are being made, they're doing them because the archives are important, because they're doing deals with those that have real value. So all the media folks, whatever the newspapers are, I guess they don't care about those. But News Corp, yeah. Wall Street Journal, New York Post, yeah, that's pretty big. Daily Mail, I think, is part of that too. Yeah. Oh, it's a big deal. Big deal. So fair use, they're going to try to use the fairest claims, and that in some cases the chatbots do reproduce their content unfairly profiting from their thoroughly researched and fact-check work. Like I said, fair use could just go ahead and just be a change of just quoting or citing these publications. If that's what you want them to do, that's okay. But this lawsuits that try to get them to go and pay for it, they're not going to win on that. Because who else is also being charged for fair use? If you get a copyright or fair use on anything you put up on YouTube or anywhere else, they just take it down. Cease and desist. That's all you get for that. And here is what California's been trying to do. They want to go and put legislation out there. And the LA Times is, of course, along with this. The California News Publishers Association, which LA Times is a member, they are sponsoring a state bill known as the California Journalism Preservation Act. This is the bargaining code. Like I talked about in other companies and other countries, they would require digital advertising giants to pay news outlets for accessing their articles, either through a predetermined fee or through an amount set by arbitration. Most publishers want to spend 70% of the funds received on journalists' salaries. Exactly what's been done in Australia and Canada, and has not worked. Because then these tech companies can go say Bafangul, and they can just go ahead and leave. They'll find a way to go ahead and get that information without you. You should just go along and play in their playground instead of just, pouting and walking home and taking your ball and going home. Another bill lawmakers are considering would tax large tech platforms for the data. Force them. Bully them. There you go. Tax large tech platforms for the data they collect from users and pump the money into news organizations by giving them a tax credit for employing full-time journalists. See, it's just this bait and switch. Oh, no, just pay us. And we're going to use it for journalism. Yeah, you're going to use it for something good. Yeah. Journalism Preservation Act. See, we're not losing journalism. It's not dead in the case of everybody wants to say that journalism is dead. Journalism is dead in the realm of anything that is mainstream. Okay? Anything that is cable network news. Journalism, for the most part, 99% is dead. I hate to bear the brunt of this to everybody out there, but people get their news from the news aggregates they get, whether it's Google or Apple or somewhere else, or they go to social media. They go to X, they go to Facebook, they go to Instagram, because they can find that information. They don't need to go anywhere else. They can just jump out wherever they want. Elon Musk is also trying to get into the role of this as well, because for him, it's a different story. Grok, it's his AI bot as part of X. But one of the things is that he has to determine where the information, how that is getting inputted right now. Because what happens is, I want to say that Grok is crowdsourced. It is crowd generated. So it's whoever is on that are verified users on X that are putting most of the input in there into Grok, and that's where it's coming from. So I'm not really sure where it's all coming in terms of that, but there's a story from Wall Street Journal that talked about this last week. There's a paywall there, so I'm not going to worry about going ahead and opening that, but, well, I don't want to say anything, but you know what? I have an easy way to go and get into it. I always do, because you know what? Somebody's always smart enough to go and help me get access to some of these articles that are behind a paywall. And I got to it in about 2 seconds. So there you go. Let's get into this story. Elon Musk and Grok. So a lot of information that was being talked about in terms of disinformation or misinformation about the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump several weeks ago. And so there's some things where the AI platform is making some incorrect information. Got it. And they're trying to say that, it was breaking news that's going on here. Katie Harbath, a former Facebook public policy director, talked about that, at the end of the day, quote, when it comes to breaking news like the shooting, you always need humans to help provide context when facts are not yet known. That's the part they're talking about. Again, it's after the fact in breaking news. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of information that's not going to come out correctly. So you have to trust whatever you're going to get your information from. Plus, you have to wait for everything to get fleshed out before you really know what the real story of something is going on. In journalism, you always wait to get several sources. You always wait to go ahead and learn everything after it's been investigated. Because in real time, we don't know. So some companies have taken a different approach to Elon Musk by not positioning their products as built for real-time news. Meta Platforms executives have said they're not going to encourage political content on the company's Threads platform, the Instagram site that competes with X. And that they want that platform to avoid the negativity and other downsides that come often with politics and hard news. But what X's chief executive Linda Yaccarino says that X is treating the attempted assassination as a major incident, giving priority to the resources to take swift action against any posts that violate the platform's rules, such as praising the attack, according to a copy of the email obtained by the Wall Street Journal. So that encompasses everything right now. It's still not perfect. But let's just say it like this. Once these major media companies get in bed and decide to go and take the advanced payouts from OpenAI or Google or wherever, or Meta, they might as well just start getting ready to go and do that. Because there's not much else they can do. The lawsuits aren't going to work. I think you're going to overcome this attack by AI is not going to work either. Because these companies did not prepare for this. The best case scenario could have been that you could have been working with them to where the internet or AI couldn't. So as I record this show tonight, OpenAI tests SearchGPT prototype as direct challenge to Google's search engine. That competition will create and foster some great things in terms of technology and changes. Dubbed SearchGPT, the tool will cite information taken from websites and news publishers. And they will provide fast and timely answers with clear and relevant sources. So I wonder when SearchGPT will actually be made available so I can look at it. An AI search engine. So next step up. So it's going right up against Google. Or right up against Facebook if you want to say that. The tool now is currently being tested by a small group of users and publishers to get feedback. It will be integrated into ChatGPT, which already has surpassed more than 100 million weekly users last fall. And users that want to try the tool are directed to join a waitlist. OpenAI has not specified a timeline for a full rollout of SearchGPT. Publishers who decide to opt out of allowing their work to be used to train OpenAI models can still be surfaced in SearchGPT results. Google right now has 90% market share in online search, dwarfing rivals such as Microsoft and DuckDuckGo. So OpenAI with SearchGPT, they hope to go ahead and take a dent into Google's market share. Yeah, Google is dominant. Well over Yahoo and Bing or DuckDuckGo or any of those right now. That's just the way it is. So as an example of what SearchGPT is going to offer, they summarize a query, like say for instance on music festivals, producing short descriptions of various festivals with an attribution link. A sidebar with other relevant links also populates and can be accessed for more information. And like say if you're looking for planting tomatoes, you search it up. The search explains when to plant and breaks down different varietals of tomatoes. Fall queries can be put in the search bar that appears at the bottom of the page. Between Perplexity, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and AI, Google now has some competition in the search realm. Google announced AI overviews in May during their annual I/O event, and a summarization tool launched to massive backlash after it proved seemingly dangerous and factually incorrect information, but they've been testing generative AI in search for a while now. They're not getting anything perfect right now, but it's working on it. So the latest news we have about Perplexity is that it's another AI company. A Wired investigation has found that Perplexity has been stealing our content or making things up with Forbes, threatening the AI company with legal action. So we just brought that up for a second, but we're going to go more into the details with that now. Because it's not just Forbes that's going after Perplexity. Condé Nast is also going after them. They own the New Yorker, Vogue, and Wired. And like I said, with Wired, they're owned by Condé Nast. They decided to do the investigation. So Perplexity has been asked to cease and desist. Stop using content from Condé Nast publications and its AI-generated responses and accuse the startup of plagiarism. A month after Forbes took action. Now, let's move along even farther than that. What about AI when it becomes a visual component? Right now, I've been trying to use Adobe, the Creative Express right now to create graphics. And sometimes it works pretty well, and sometimes it doesn't do as well as I would like it to be. So I've tried to use it a little bit here and there. And, a couple times I've done things with it, but it's not really great yet. But I'm sure with more time and more input, doing videos or doing graphics, AI will get to that point. But like I said, again, the real work that's being done where it's very effective is in text. In text and in audio right now. It'll take a while for video and graphics to really get to its way. But again, that's how it always works with the internet. That the visual component always takes more time, but the print and audio concept can be done pretty quickly. So far. Al Jazeera Media Institute is going to launch a new program, AI in Newsrooms, beginning August 1st. It'll be the first program, it's the first of its kind at the Institute, and it will be presented by broadcaster ep.341. It addresses the uses of AI in newsrooms around the world, addressing the various problems associated with that use. And the program addresses the uses of AI in newsrooms, and it will talk about the technical skills and material obstacles preventing the integration of smart tools in media institutions, and going through the challenges related to the public trust in the content produced by the machine, and ending with fears about the potential impacts of the uses of AI on professional ethics. So we're getting programs that are talking about it right now. Journalism is trying to prepare for the worst, but I don't know how well they're going to do with that. Another story that came in I wanted to look at as well. Media Makers Meet wrote a story about why AI and a tiny text file mean you may have to rethink your paywall. So for AI, will the paywall still continue to be a thing? Very important story. It might have something to do with robots.txt. Robots.txt is a tiny text file that specifies what can and what can't access your website. It gives or withholds permission to search engines. But with new search engines like Perplexity and Arc Search, they skip the inconvenience of backlinks and simply supply the user with answers. So it's driving a rethink of the relationship between search engines and publishers. Now, some companies are demanding money for the new generations of AI search tools to even access their content. An effective paywall that involves negotiating the keys for the application programming interface, the API, that gives the robots access to content. Nobody really expects robots.txt to be respected anymore. While this is an option for Reddit or for newspapers with deep pockets and lots of lawyers, it is less obvious as a solution for local press. The catch is, while we want to keep the AI invaders out, we really, really want to welcome not only regulars, but complete strangers who might take a fancy to what we have to offer. So you have the hard paywall with several characteristics, which is total blocking of content, immediate confrontation, strict strategy, increasing the valuability of paid content, and others. So they're saying the challenge is to use your data on reader behavior to serve them better. So they're saying here, if you set up a paywall, start making small, smart exceptions to encourage users to discover and enjoy your content. Be strategic and apply the paywall to content that the readers value highly. In a competitive environment marked by the emergence of intelligent browsers and AI in search, it's essential to adopt more subtle strategies. Increase the visibility of paid content. The strategy now is outdated and only applies to a handful of reference media such as the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal. For the local press, it would be counterproductive. And finally, they say that, an AI-informed content strategy that intelligently links content and form and highlights the values of the medium is essential if it is to adapt to the needs of users at the key moments when they choose to be informed. So yeah, CEO and founder of Upgrade Media, David Salonen, brings a good point up. Watch out with your paywalls now. and how that gets affected for the AI, because you can't just isolate people from getting into that information. They want to be able to go and still read it, right? That's still important. So how about that? I'm not going to bring up anything more when it comes to podcasts or news or anything like that. By the way, I will take one story and bring that up real quick. We do have Deadpool and Wolverine coming up this weekend, and that looks like to be a major film. And I forgot how much that I saw that was expected to see how much that movie was going to make and what it is expected to go ahead and make overall. I haven't looked yet at the projections yet. Projected box office. Let's take a look and see what they say right now. Currently, it's expected to get $170 million domestically or $360 million global opening. And I will be going to that movie to watch it tomorrow night at my Regal Theater. I expect it to be funny. I've already seen that the reviews so far are pretty interesting for it, but I wasn't going to make a big thing about this and talk about it. I think everybody else will talk about it, and we can talk about it next week and see how much of a phenomenon it is that we can get a superhero movie back once again. And it's nice to see one superhero movie and not a bunch of mid superhero movies. I like that part. That's really cool to think about. All right, well, that's the show. Thanks for listening in. And finally, as you always do, Broadcasters Podcast. You can always find all my content, all past episodes, on my YouTube channel at King of Podcasts. Or you can go right to my website, kingofpodcasts.com. And if you go ahead and go right into the section where you see the Broadcasters Podcast, click through, you'll see all the past episodes. Cool stuff. Come back next week for another Broadcasters Podcast. Please remember, because of those AI companies are coming out there, remember how important content is, because content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands. Yeah,